everybody. So thanks so much for joining us today. And my name is Alexandra Hockhouse, for anybody who doesn't know me. So I'm very happy to be sharing with you today about mentoring students in our schools. And why don't we just start with a prayer? In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Come, Holy Spirit. Send forth your Spirit, and they shall be created. Let us pray. Lord, by the light of the Holy Spirit, you have taught the hearts of your faithful. In the same Spirit, help us to know what is truly right, and always rejoice in his consolation. We ask this through Christ our Lord. Christ our King, Virgin most prudent Mary, Mother of the Church. In the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. So, good morning. So, I am by no means an expert at this topic, but it's something that we strive to do every day in our schools, and I've had the gift of working with some people in my 10 years here at the Highlands who have been gifted in this area and have taught me a lot. So I'll try to just share what I've learned, and also I just want to say a big thank you to everyone who answered the questionnaire that I sent out, because I felt like I received a lot of great feedback from that, and I tried to incorporate a good bit of it into this presentation today. Also, I think I'm talking to a lot of the experts who are out there, so I don't want this to just be a one-sided conversation. So once I've finished the formal part of the presentation, I really hope that we can open it up for questions and answers and discussion. I don't expect that all of the questions would be directed at me. So what we can do is enter our questions into the chat and send those out to everybody. You can see the little chat bubble in your controls on the sidebar. And feel free to enter questions throughout the presentation. Whenever something occurs to you, you can type it in. And then at the end, we can take more questions, and I will open those up for anyone who would like to answer the questions. And one more caveat. Anybody who's worked at a school knows that it is very different to mentor boys than it is to mentor girls. And so I have to admit that my experience is very heavily weighted on the girls' side, naturally. So I apologize to all of our male counterparts who are joining us today if this is a little heavily weighted on that side, and we would love to hear from you especially during the chat part at the end, so you can balance it out. All right, so let's get into our presentation here. So the first point is, who does the mentoring? Well, all of us are coming from situations, I think, where we have consecrated legionaries mentoring in our schools, maybe with the exception of Calgary. We're sorry about that. Hope someday we can provide that. So that's sort of a given. So the big question that I wanted to address here is, can lay people do it? I was reflecting on that, and I was reflecting on the qualities that I thought would be needed for someone to do that, and these are the ones that I came up with. Someone who has a solid Christian understanding of the human person, is living their own mature and well-developed Christian life. They have a prayer life. They have a solid relationship with Christ. They're growing in that. They're growing in their own personal formation. They know what it is to work on their own personal formation so that they can help other people do that. It's someone who has experience working with children and adolescents and has an ability to build relationships with them and with their parents. And also, I think someone who needs to have a grasp of our charism and our particular approach to youth, that vision that ECYD gives us of how we relate to young people, or at least has the potential to understand that and be trained in it. So in theory, I think it is possible, but all of us are running into the question of, how do you actually make that work in the school, and is that really possible? So taking a few pointers from people who are out in the field, Emily Roman at Pinecrest shared with me that yes, they do have some people, 6 teachers who are well-formed and have good rapport with the students who are doing this. But she actually said, I don't think this is a great idea, but it's arisen out of necessity. And then Betty from Manila shared with me that they have also actually included this in the contracts for their teachers. So not only do the teachers have duties in the classroom, but duties as mentors, with sort of with that philosophy of we're all called to be formators. So it's not just something that belongs to the formation department. And in fact, that their mentoring duties aren't something that are just put on them by the formation department, but they actually have to report to the principal about how they're doing on that. She expressed some difficulties with this. She said that it has been hard for them to willingly take this on because they already feel overloaded. And it's been hard to integrate the reports of mentoring. She says we need to include it in the same system in which they turn in their grades so that the teachers don't feel they're doing a favor to the consecrated or priests by mentoring. So basically they're trying it out, but it sounds like at least in these two situations it's still a struggle. We've contemplated it here at the Highlands and had some pretty extensive conversations about that with our principal, with our academic coordinators, with our formation teams. And I think we're all looking at it because, you know, personnel we're all stretched, right? But we've said, well, maybe it could work, but we don't think that as a school we're ready yet, because there needs to be a culture in place, first of all, where the teachers really do feel themselves as formators and want that, and also have like the human skills to act as formators and do that successfully. Some do, some don't. A lot of them need to grow in it, just in the classroom. So the other thing we said was, if we were to do it, we don't think that, you know, a teacher who becomes a mentor cannot mentor those who they also teach in the classroom. Hope that makes sense. So someone that they actually have as a student, they cannot mentor at the same time. Why? Because it's like wearing two different hats. And it can be confusing, I think, for the student, because it's like the student is being asked to relate to that adult in two very different roles. And the student could be, essentially, you know, pouring out their heart to them, opening up their difficulties with their family, and so on and so forth. And then for the teacher, that presents a difficulty because they may not be able to maintain kind of that professional teacher relationship when it comes time to grading the student, correcting the student, being objective in the way that they treat that student and fair. So there's just some difficulties with that we kind of haven't been able to quite surmount, you know, in contemplating it. All right. Let's move on. The relationship is really the basis of mentoring. And so before I got into, you know, maybe the details of how we mentor, or what we talk about in mentoring, I felt like we needed to start here. Relationship is foundational for having successful and effective mentoring. And I think we all agree on that. You know, the questionnaire that I sent out, everyone was wholeheartedly, you know, saying there needs to be a close personal relationship before you can really get anywhere. And the basis of that, of course, is trust. And the way that you build that is presence and involvement in the students' lives. There's really no shortcuts for this. We know in our movement and in the history of the way we have worked, trust hasn't always been built. And sometimes we've wanted to kind of like fast track the relationship so that we could just get that person to the goals that we have for them. And even today, I mean, I have to look at myself and the way that I'm treating students sometimes and say, wait a minute, you know, am I just trying to get to a goal with this student? Am I just trying to get them to grow in a certain area because I know that he or she needs that? But am I trying to do it too fast? before I've actually built a relationship where the student can open up and want those goals for themselves and be like an active player in their own formation. So we have to be careful, because we have that tendency as a movement sometimes to favor apostolic effectivity and that drive. But that should never cancel out the time that it takes to invest in the person and in the relationship. And we're never going to be really effective, in the apostolic sense, and fulfill our goals, so to speak, if we don't have the relationship, because there's not going to be really anything to talk about. How are we going to know that person? How are they going to share with themselves, if they don't trust us and if they don't want to talk to us? Okay, so ways to build presence and involvement in their lives. There's tons of ways, and we have such a privileged environment as a school to be doing that. I think we're spoiled. It's maybe a lot easier for us than those who work out in the Easy Ready clubs. You can find a student in the hallways. You can go to practice and play sports with them. You can show up at their plays and extracurriculars. You can go behind the stage and help them with their costume changes. You can go to their ECYD meetings. You can accompany them on apostolic projects. You can have dinners with their families. You can even be, one contact told me I was part of a panel of judges for a speech assignment because I just wanted to be, with her in that academic environment. I'm going to highlight one particular way that we have found really effective at the Highland School, and that's being able to teach religion class in the middle school. Because in the middle school, it's that time where you're forging the relationship with the student, and once you've established that in middle school, 90% of the time, that student is going to still trust you and consider you a go-to person once they hit high school. So teaching religion class it's the most natural environment in a school, the classroom, and it just catapults you, into an instant relationship with these kids. You get to know them very fast, very well. You have daily contact with them. You see them from a lot of different angles. They love you, they respect you, they look up to you, you have a place in their life. With all of this, I just want to point out that all of these types of interactions with the students are indirect ways of mentoring. So beyond that formal moment when you call him or her to your office, and you go over the normal set of things that you talk about, these are excellent ways to touch a student and to make a change in the way that they think about life, the way they think about themselves, the way that they're handling a certain situation. And that is an excellent type of mentoring that we shouldn't, forget about or devalue. The next part I wanted to go into was about overcoming resistance to mentoring. Sometimes we run into moments or situations where mentoring is not really looked for, not really welcomed. That could be on an institutional level, maybe as a school. There's been a historical situation where trust has been jeopardized, and so now it's very hard to enter into mentoring with the students. Or maybe there's just individual situations or class situations where, for whatever reason, those students are having difficulty with the idea of being mentored. So the question here is how do I overcome that? How do I make mentoring feel natural and not forced? So I'm going to offer a number of answers. The first one is how it's presented. Yeah, I think it's important that the way you communicate what mentoring is to the students can make a big difference, especially in high school. The way we like to say it here at the Highlands is, and we call it advisory. Advisory is the school's way of fulfilling the commitment that we've made to your parents. As a school, we committed to your parents that we would provide personal attention to our students. And so this is just our way of, making sure that we follow through on that commitment. And it kind of takes like the focus off of, we're here to talk to you. And we're just saying, your parents really wanted this school for you. They chose it because they knew that this would be a place where you wouldn't just be a number. And then I always say it can be as short or as long as you make it. If it's a 5-minute check-in, because that's all you need right now, that's great. If it's a deep conversation and you're getting into more extensive topics about your life, that's great too. And we all have different moments where we need one or the other. I just wanted to include this comment from Carla, who works in Overbrook, and she says how she presents mentoring to the girls. And she says here, what I always say, especially with Catholic girls, is we all want to be happy, but we don't know how. The secret to happiness is love, but we don't know how to love. Jesus is the master of love. We see it in the cross. So mentoring can help you to get to know better the ways of Jesus in order to help you to be a happier person. I also tell them that we all know what God wants from all Christians. It's summarized in the commandments, but sometimes it is difficult to apply them or interpret them in the daily circumstances. That's why mentoring is so helpful. When they are far away from faith, I present it as coaching. I'm certified as coach and mentor, so that helps. It's so beneficial to have someone that can accompany you in achieving your goals in all the areas of your life, in finding out what are the interior barriers that don't allow you to fulfill your goals. A lot of our kids, at least in the South, are highly involved in athletics. So if you draw the analogy between, do you have somebody that coaches you for basketball? Does that person work with you on the skills to make you a better player? Where would you be without a coach in that area? So, it's the same for life. We all need somebody who can kind of, help us out, give us some guidance, somebody who's been there before. The second answer I'm going to give to this question about overcoming resistance, making mentoring natural and not forced, is the need to build up a positive culture of mentoring over time, and it takes time. This is especially for those of us who come into a school environment where there's been maybe some lack of trust, and the consecrator of the legionaries or the personal one-on-one attention is not seen as something so favorable. So we have to be really patient in a situation like that because it can take years to overcome that. And you don't want to force or rush that process. One of the comments that I received on the questionnaire is that it really boils down to mentors making an effort to know their students well. So that goes right back to the relationship. And that's where I would say focus on the indirect mentoring in a situation like that. And then try to see them regularly once you are able to call them into your office. Here's a comment that I got from Laura Matthews, who worked for a while here at the Highlands. She also worked in Gateway in St. Louis before it closed, and she's now working in Everest in Madrid. She said, the director of the school explains it over and over again on every level, parents, staff, and students, so that it really becomes the norm and the hallmark of our school. And with all the formators helping and calling the girls, it becomes super normal to see a girl having her personal moment. It's our jewel of what we offer and what makes us different. So everyone is on board and supportive, especially the teachers. And even though at first the girl is nervous, afterwards she feels known, loved, and accepted, and she wants to come back. And they see their friends going too, which always helps. I pass through the classes at the beginning of the year and explain again what it is, and that I will be calling the girls. I start alphabetically, but then little by little I tell them that if they would like to talk, to come to speak with me or to leave a note. Then I have some other tips that I thought were great to include here. And this is more in a situation where if you have a class that's resistant or a particular girl that's having a hard time, you can try this. So one is the survey. We've done this lots of times, not just in relation to mentoring, but in relation to confession and lots of other things at the school. So Rachel from Northwoods, our dear school that isn't with us anymore, but when she was there, she gave a survey, and the girls could mark 4 options. Yes, character coaching helps me and I want to continue. 2, yes, I want to continue with character coaching, but give me more heads up beforehand. 3, I appreciate character coaching, but I will ask for it when I need it. Or 4, thanks for the character coaching opportunity, but I prefer to be accompanied in other ways. So it's really positive, and it gives the students a chance to say how much, what level they want to be accompanied on. It also gives them that sense of that you're respecting their freedom, and that is actually a really important way to build up trust in the students. Next little tip is not forcing the conversation to be quote-unquote formative. So if you have a girl that walks into your office, or a boy, and you start to, try to ask them questions, see how things are going, and their answers are yes, yes, I'm good, yes, it's okay. That's okay. Sometimes, at least for me, I'm impatient to be able to go deep with that student, and I know everything that the Lord can offer them in their growth, and I want that for them. But if it's a moment where you're putting all the bait out and they're not biting, you can't force it, So maybe the answer in those moments is just to say, great, sounds like you're doing awesome, keep up the good work. Let's check in, next time. And if you ever need anything in between, you know where to find me. And you're just ready. And that is also the moment where you look for those indirect ways to build up the relationship and, catch that student in the hallway and use that kind of indirect mentoring approach in the meantime. Third thing, know their sensitivities. This might be a little bit weighted on the girls' side, but it can be embarrassing for them to be called out in front of their friends. So if you know that she has sensitivities towards that, or the class might be like that, where you're in a situation where they don't really like to be called, find different ways to do it. Leaving notes in their locker, or wait until you find her in the hallway and then slip her a note or something. Also, like calling them alphabetically, making sure that you don't call her more frequently than you call the rest of the students, kind of keeping track of your records. All those things are little, but they're actually really important. And the last thing is walk and talk. So I know the Legionaries do this a lot because I see them, and it can help sometimes for our girls too if they're not the type that wants to look you in the eyes or sit across a desk, which can actually be a pretty formal environment. Sometimes just getting up and walking laps in the hallways is the best way. So now we're going to talk about the content of mentoring. So what is the content of mentoring? My little diagram here shows the 4 pillars of formation, and that's because mentoring should touch on all 4 of those. This is about their personal growth in integral formation. So you're trying to hit on all of those. And why? Because it's charismatic. That is our Reina Christi approach to formation and to mentoring. So just a basic outline. I think I'm not telling you anything new with this, but these are the types of things that you want to be touching on in mentoring. How is school? How are friends? How's your family doing? How are you doing? How's your relationship with God? Your prayer life. How is whatever you're involved in? Sports, the play, your student council, challenge, conquest, whatever you're doing. Maybe it's karate, outside of school. That's great. Know what the student is involved in, be it in school or out, so you can ask him or her about that. Also, things like, how was your weekend? What are you doing for break? You know, get a sense of like how they spend their free time, what their family does together. You know, that's important. That can tell you a lot. Any struggles, difficulties, questions that you want to talk about? Just kind of leave it open, give them a chance. Goals is another point. How do you think you're doing on your formation? You know, we actually ask them that here at the Highlands because we try to create a culture where they know what formation is, they know what the 4 pillars are, they know that it's actively expected here that we're about formation and we're about your personal growth and we're about you becoming the best version of yourself, and we're here to help you with that. So how do you think you're doing on that? You know, and what things, like, where do you want to grow this year? Where do you see yourself going in your formation this year? In middle school, especially in 8th grade, you can talk about getting ready for high school. In high school, you can talk about getting ready for college, choosing a career, knowing what their talents are, what their strengths are. And then if a student is, you know, someone that you know has like a particular struggle emotionally, psychologically, maybe a learning difference, it's always good to bring those things up if, you know, that's an open topic. Just to ask, like, okay, how's it going? You know, so have you been going to therapy? Are you, how's that going for you? You know, is there any change in your condition or whatever? Have you been taking your medication? Like, just kind of staying on top of those things with him or her. Of course, you know, it's important that the student has opened up those things, or that they know that you know because maybe their parents told you or something, so that you're not violating their privacy. Just want to take a moment to mention that talking about academic life is important. Their grades, their relationships with their teachers, how responsible they are for their homework, how they organize themselves. This is just something that at least I feel very strongly that we can't ignore. Just because we're consecrated or we're legionaries and we're spiritual people, sometimes we might want to kind of gloss over these aspects, but whenever you're mentoring a student, you are guiding them towards their vocation in life. And their vocation in life right now is, for a large part, being a student and being a daughter and being a sister and being a friend. But the majority of what they do all day and all evening is being a student. So talking about this area is great because it can open the door to a lot of aspects of human formation. And you can learn a lot about the student by how she approaches school. For example, is she highly motivated? Is she a type A? Is she a perfectionist? Does he get easily stressed out? How does he handle his stress? Is he motivated by getting pressure put on him, or is he self-motivated? How much importance does the family put on academics? Is there pressure there? You know, where do the family values lie? Are mom and dad involved? Are they too involved? Are they not involved enough? How maturely does the student face responsibility? Does she understand cause and effect? You know, how are her executive functions? You know, and her cognitive maturity. So I think professional development for us is important in this area because this is not something that we maybe touch on in our own formation. But just go grab yourself a book on study skills that is written for middle or high school students, and one that you like, and learn it. And then you'll be able to transmit it, you know, and kind of bone up on the basics of learning differences, especially ADHD, because that's something that we're seeing pop out all over the place these days. Just a little quote here from Betty in Manila. She says, mentoring is successful if it's integrated. The mentors receive a copy of the report cards. They are involved when there are discipline issues, are present in the parent-teacher conferences, speak to the teachers to see how to support the students better. And I would wholeheartedly agree with that. Another area that you're going to touch on a lot is their social and their emotional life. At least for girls, relationships are huge. And I would say maybe the second biggest area you're going to touch on are attitudes, or you can substitute the word feelings. Right? So how do we do this? What's our role in this? As mentors, we are kind of like that third parent or coach, life coach in their lives. So in the same way that a parent would guide them, correct them, help them to work through things, you know, help them understand themselves, comfort them, encourage them, all those things. That's what we're doing. It's important here to distinguish between our role and, say, a professional counselor and their role. When you are mentoring a student and you have a good relationship with that student, it is not unusual, in high school especially, for issues to surface. Could be family issues, could be signs of anxiety or depression that you're seeing. These are moments when you need to know kind of when to refer, when to encourage the student to say, this goes beyond what I can help you with, and it is really normal to seek out someone who has a deeper, professional expertise that can help you in these kinds of things. It's not weird to do that, and you just kind of like help the student to consider it, right? And bringing the family into that is really important too. I will never promise a girl to not share something with her parents. Like sometimes they'll ask you, like, don't tell anyone about this, but I have to be able to keep that open relationship with the parents too, for her good. And I try to explain that to her, if I see like a conflict kind of arising there. Now, when a student is already seeing a counselor, if she shares that with you or if her parents share that with you, it really helps a lot, like I said earlier, to be able to be on the same page with what the counselor is recommending. Kind of like how he or she is guiding that student so that you can encourage in the same line. Then we all know that it's difficult at times to get the conversation going, so I just wanted to include some different quote-unquote conversation aids that might help you. Feel free to take anything from here that you can use to spark good interactions in your mentoring. So in the area of spiritual life, these are some questions that I liked. So what do you like most about your Catholic faith? What's the hardest thing for you about living your Catholic faith? What's your relationship with God like right now? What are you hoping for yourself as you are confirmed? I think in confirmation year, that can spark some really great conversations because they're already looking at that a lot. But at any time, you can ask them, what are you hoping for in your growth in spiritual life? What's your prayer life like? What's your faith story like? Kind of like getting into it with, how does their family live their faith? What do you think Christ is asking of you? Then also, another way to spark good conversations in mentoring is to tie it into an activity that you've had in formation class. Some of us are lucky enough to have maybe a weekly period where we're teaching formative topics to the students by grades. So you can tie it into something that you've been seeing there, maybe a video that you show and you ask them, like, what was your impression? Or, hey, what did you think of that thing we read? Or, yeah, what's your opinion about that topic, whatever. Or tying it into the school retreat. To give you an example of this, we've done dream boxes, we call them, in 8th grade, where the kids have a time of prayer and personal reflection on the retreat, and they write down a number of their fears, a number of their dreams for their life, a number of the qualities, personal qualities that they believe that they possess, and a number of the qualities that they want to develop in themselves. So that can be a really awesome conversation starter, because after the retreat you can go back and say, hey, do you want to talk about your dream box, a little bit? I find that it's always good to, when we're actually doing those types of retreat activities, to preface it and say, this is an awesome thing to talk to your advisor about. this is a, this might be something that your advisor could bring up with you. So maybe you want to, share it with her. So I just kind of like plant the seed, and then it makes it easier for the advisor to actually bring it up later. Another thing that we do in 7th grade is we do a unit in formation class on convictions. So the way that I've structured it is it's part of the class is presentations and activities, and another part of the class is personal reflection, and that's interspersed throughout the unit, and it takes about 6 weeks to work through the unit. So at the beginning of the unit, I tell them you're going to be formulating some of your own convictions, and you're going to have a really cool ceremony at the end where you get to ratify your convictions in front of God, and you're going to get a symbol that you get to keep as a memory of that, and you can even invite your parents. And so to help you to write your own convictions, because that's a pretty challenging thing to do, it's like a really mature thing to do, your advisor is going to be like a personal coach for you a little bit through that process. So as you do your own personal reflections, sometimes you're going to have some opportunities to talk to her about what you've been thinking about. So I totally preface it, and that way it's not awkward for them, hopefully, when it comes time to actually talk to the advisor about those things. Another great way to spark conversations is just to have a general set of goals or guidelines for their growth at their grade level. And this is something that we've tried to kind of write out and formulate at the Highlands. So it's, in 6th grade we try to, and there's kind of like a set of targets under each of the 4 pillars of formation. And so in advising, you can take those and you can kind of look at them with the student and see how to make it personal to them. Then I just wanted to stop for a moment and consider age when we're talking about content. So what is the difference between mentoring middle school students and high school students? So in middle school, I think we can all observe that they are much more present moment, here and now. They're still growing very much in just getting to know themselves and learning how to have friendships and learning how to deal with school and becoming a little bit more independent and dealing with their own feelings, etc. So at this age, mentoring can just be a brief check-in, from 5 minutes to 20 minutes. The conversations you're going to have are more of simple direct guidance on concrete and present moment questions that they have. I'm struggling with this friendship right now, I don't know what to do. Or my friends are leaving me out. Or I'm having trouble with this class. Or, oh my gosh, this teacher, whatever. So they just want a little bit of help and advice in those moments. And the fact is, oftentimes they don't even remember their crisis a week or a couple days later, right? So it's not so much about the crisis, but about using the crisis as kind of a launching pad to build a relationship with that student and have your little points of formation that you're working on with them. It helps a lot at this age to go down to lunch and recess and hang out with them, play with them, and then talk to them about concrete things or actions that you saw take place there. The good thing about this age is that they still really look up to you, and they want authority figures, trusting, caring adults who are firm and can provide the structure and security that they're looking for at an age that is oftentimes interiorly and socially turbulent. Then with high school, everything gets more complex at this age, right? So they start to realize, my family is not so perfect. Maybe I have issues or my mom and dad have issues. Dating, sexuality, all these things start to come to the forefront of their consciousness. Moral questions, what's the right thing or wrong thing to do in this situation, or I'm being put in this situation with my friends, or I've been going to these parties, or whatever. Questions about their faith. Why is God like that? Or I feel I don't know, I feel like I can't talk to him. I'm not worthy of him, or I don't know, I'm just in a darker place right now, or studying, managing their time, all of that gets harder because they get more independent and it's up to them. So this is good. There's a lot more to talk about, and you can go a lot deeper with them. You can start to dig into their values, how they're forming their conscience, their prayer life, what their aspirations in life are, who they want to be. And it's a time of a lot of growth and self-knowledge and becoming autonomous and forming their own identity. So as a mentor, your job is to accompany, to indicate things, just to mirror them back to themselves, to suggest, to make, to ask questions that get them thinking, to encourage, to correct at times when you have the relationship to be able to do that. And it can build. Whereas in middle school, it's kind of like more in the moment. This can really build so that, it's like, remember we talked about last time? Well, hey, this is what's been going on since then. I put this quote in from Emily at Pinecrest because I thought this was a great insight. She talks a lot about leading them in high school towards like a preparation for spiritual direction. So that can include troubleshooting and life in general, but it's working towards a more programmed effort to obtain a virtue, as well as building a real prayer life and learning how to discern where God is leading them. Now I just wanted to transition into talking about mentoring as a system in a school. Okay, so this is a little bit more on the practical side, like how do you structure it, formally speaking, in a school? So I think we all have probably different structures that we're working with, and they probably all have different strengths and weaknesses, and that's great. What I can do is present to you mainly what we've done at the Highland School, and I'll include some comments from other schools that I got through the questionnaires as well. So here we call it the advisory program, and the reason why we chose that term was just because we found that it's a very commonly known and accepted term out in the educational field. A lot of schools, a lot of public schools, have advisory programs. So it's a term that a parent wouldn't at all flinch or find foreign, right? So here I put the description of the advisory program from our own parent-student handbook, and it says here, the Highland School believes that each of its students deserves in-depth personal attention in order to receive the best formation possible. In order to achieve this, each student has the opportunity, and we put that in like deliberately, has the opportunity, because they may deny that opportunity, and that's okay, to receive advising from a consecrated woman or a consecrated man or religious of the Legion of Christ from 6th grade through 12th grade. We actually do, we try to make an effort to give some personal attention in 4th and 5th grade as well, as I know we do in some of our other schools. And in fact, in the school in Manila, they even start in 1st grade. But we're not promising that formally in 4th and 5th. So the commitment that the school is making is from 6th through 12th. Advising gives students the opportunity to touch base with a member of the school's formation team on a regular basis who can provide encouragement, advice, and motivation in any of the 4 areas of their personal integral formation. Okay, so when do we do mentoring? We discussed this at length over the years with our principal, and like many of you, we use only the non-core subjects. So that would be theology, art, speech, and PE. And here it's important to communicate with the teacher when you're calling students out of class. We just have a general understanding that that's going to happen with the teacher, so we don't have to actually send an email every time. In some schools, that's what they do. Maybe that's needed, and that's great. Frequency, it can vary. Here our commitment is once a quarter. Okay, one of the big questions out there is whether you assign mentors or not. At the Highlands, what we do is we assign them. We put a lot of prayer and thought into who goes with what grade. In middle school, what we've found is that it's advantageous to rotate the mentors because we're trying to build up just a positive experience of there's this team of consecrated women or this team of legionaries, and they are present in your life. They all love you. They all care about you. They're all involved in your school, and they're all great people to talk to. Okay? And that's great because the students they don't mind so much about changing advisor from year to year because they're changing so much during that time, and you know, maybe they're not ready for like a deep bond with a mentor yet, right? Then in high school, it's a little different. For us, it's been kind of 50-50. So some of the students like to stay with the same person year after year, and they can opt to do that. So some of them like to change, you know. Maybe they didn't have a great experience, so they wanted to try somebody else the next year. So we do assign all throughout the grades, but we always give them the option to request a change, and it's pretty much no questions asked if they request a change, unless like you know that there might be something deeper that you want to work through with the student there. And if you really have the relationship to do that, you could, but pretty much we give them the freedom. Then I saw here from Pinecrest that they choose their mentor, and they actually can express the desire for mentoring on a survey that they fill out on their school retreat. And then in Manila, the students give their top 3 preferences for the mentor. In Detroit, I'm not quite sure. I think they assign, but they have this cool system with boxes. So they have their assigned one that will check in with them, you know, the kind of the official check-in. But then if you want to talk to somebody else, you just put a little note in their box. Okay, so as part of the advisory system at the Highlands, we have a pretty involved role in the discipline of the school. I'm not going to say a lot about this, but basically the key point here is that we really see formative discipline as an element and a means towards integral formation. When maybe back in the past in our history in the movement, we've kind of put this dichotomy between formation and those who are formators, and then discipline and those who discipline. And we've seen that here as being kind of a false dichotomy where it's one person and you are just helping them wherever they're at and, you know, in their personal formation. And maybe that's right now kind of in a more disciplinary role of, you know, they're having some infractions and difficulties and things, you know, in the school, and they just need help working through that, right? So we get pretty involved in having those types of formative disciplinary conversations with the students and even administering some of the consequences, which again are really geared towards being formative. Of course, that's all in conjunction with our Dean of Students, who is really the ultimate one responsible for the kids' discipline. Definitely want to highlight the teamwork with the teachers. Being the mentor really comes, or the advisor comes to be a bridge between the student and the teacher, especially when the student might be struggling academically or behaviorally. You can do a lot of work with communicating with the teachers, you know, what's the best approach with that student right now, or asking the teachers, what do you see? What's the student responding to? Where are they not following through on maybe that resolution that we made in mentoring last week, you know, and just kind of being that back and forth. This is also a great opportunity to form teachers to be formators. Okay, someone is telling me that it's frozen, but I think my access is still good to internet here. So
I can still see the screen.
Okay. We also are very deliberate about our communication on mentoring, presenting to parents at the beginning of the year. And I know in some schools they have a great email or newsletter that they send out, Pinecrest especially, if you want to get resources from them on that. We do it more face-to-face, and we actually have like a moment, like a 10-minute moment here. Parents can come into school and meet with the advisor for that grade and learn what the goals are for the year. We also try to meet with parents at least once a year as like an advisor-parent conference. We also present it to the teachers, and we make sure that we communicate that well to them, so they understand what the objectives are, and they're usually always on board. My last point here is just to share with you answers that I received from the questionnaire. And I asked the question, what would you say has been the greatest keys to achieving a mentoring that truly reaches students' hearts and is transformative? So out of the many beautiful answers that I received, I just wanted to pull out some common points. So really listening to them. Someone said looking into their eyes, non-judgmentally. Being with them in grace-filled moments such as retreats, projects, adoration, apostolic trips, and accompanying them in those moments. Building relationships with their parents. The mentor working on his or her own personal integration. The more that we do that, the more effective that we can be in accompanying others in their integration. The 5 elements of accompaniment in the ECYD book. Shout out for ECYD Week 2, somebody that's going. Getting the insights of other formators about the student, be it teachers, the dean, other members of the formation team. Showing the students that we can relate to their problems and we aren't just like holy and naive people who pray all day and are disconnected from the world. And patience when mentoring and working in a school starts to feel routine and like it's not going anywhere. Lastly, I just wanted to share this quote with you from Laura Matthews. For me, mentoring is being an extension of the love of God present incarnate in the world. I ask myself, how does Jesus want to reach this beautiful one? And he inspires. Taking the focus off of ourselves is key too. We are merely the sheepdogs of the Good Shepherd, turning each little lamb towards the one who is leading the project of their lives. Okay, so now I would love to open it up to some of the questions that we've gotten, and I saw some coming in earlier, so that was great. I'm going to see if I can get to them. Wow, there's lots here. This is great. Okay, so the first one is from Emily Roman. She wanted to make a comment. Emily, I hope it's okay if I share this, because she's probably clarifying something of that I said. So she said, about my input for lay people giving mentoring, I want it to be clear that if the right person who fulfills the criteria you just put there is available, then it could be just fine. But our specific situation has arisen out of necessity. It's hard to have a teacher do it in addition to teaching. Currently, the teachers we have doing it need a bit more integration with our charism, etc., and they are also mentoring students that they are also teaching. But if a lay campus minister that fits your criteria were there to do it, I think it could be awesome, and I would agree with that. If you have a dean or a coach or someone even hired for that type of position, that could be really beneficial. Okay. Then a comment from Kathleen Nichols. She said, I don't totally agree with teaching as a good way to enter into relationships to be able to mentor. The difficulty lies in having to discipline the kids as a teacher. That can tend to close them up and strain a relationship. True. I think you have a point there, Kathleen. I also think that sometimes the benefits can outweigh the dangers there. A lot of it is how you do it, how you correct, how you discipline. And I believe, like as consecrated and legionaries, that we are pretty well versed in being able to, or we need to be pretty well versed in being able to both encourage and give positive feedback to students, but also be able to point out when something's going wrong in a loving way that still creates trust with the student. And that's something that we need to be able to teach our teachers how to do too. Not saying that we'll do it perfectly every time though. Okay. Does anybody else have any comments about that? Because that's, I'm sure, a point of contention. Okay, Trisha's here and she wants to make a comment. So,
I taught middle school, and I think that at least for middle school students, the most important thing, well, I think for all the students, but the most important thing is that they know that you love them. So if your discipline is coming from impatience or frustration or anything like that, then they can close up. But if your corrections are coming from love, then I think it's not a problem as long as they do that.
Did everybody hear that?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Yay.
I would like to say something. Can you hear me?
Yes.
It's Elena.
Hi, Elena.
Okay, there we go. Regarding this point, I would just say that it depends on the consecrated or legionary that they have the talent to do it. I think it's more about profile than necessarily good or not.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the only thing.
That makes sense. Yeah. Not everybody is called to teach. Okay. Then Emily asked, does it go well when you tell the kids you're doing something because your parents asked me to? That's a great question. I think you were maybe asking that when I was talking about how to present mentoring. And I find it helpful to present it a little bit like that, because especially for the ones that don't, they might feel like a little bit pressured, like this is something I have to go and talk to these people, What I'm emphasizing more is we've made a commitment as a school, and so that's why we're checking in with you. It's not because we want to force you to come and talk to us. So if anybody else wants to comment on that, that's great.
Can you see Father Anthony's response?
I'm looking.
I'm happy to explain it.
Okay.
So I would agree with Kathleen's point, and agree also with what you said, Alexandra and Trish, that it depends on the rapport you build. From my experience working with teachers, to be honest, the majority of teachers I work with have more struggles with discipline than they have more successes with discipline. Disciplining in a classroom is just hard because you're with them day in and day out. So it is a hard skill set to learn, and there are those who have. So I think, at least in my experience, it's fair to say the majority might struggle more than they might feel successful. But those who have a skill set where they just build a rapport and they build a trust because they know they're loved, then those same people can also enter into the students' lives and then mentor them because there's a space for that. And actually, then they'll actually be the best mentors because they really know the kids inside and out because you see them so often and so much about them. So I think it is a lot harder, but something that I think we're called to, especially to grow those skill sets too.
Thank you, Father.
You're welcome.
Okay. Oh, we had one more question from Emily. How often, I'm not quite sure I understand the question. It says, how often do you get to mentor one student per year? How many mentors do you have at this school? We have 4 consecrated that are working on the formation team. So we're pretty spoiled as far as personnel goes. I feel bad saying that because I know how many you have, Emily, and how many students you have. So once a quarter is really what we can manage here, and I know for some people it might be a little bit less. So I guess it's just working with the reality that you have at each school. I hope that answers your question. I wasn't sure if I totally understood what you had typed there. Okay. Well, I think our time is up.
Sorry, can I just speak to that point real quick? Oh, Alina, go ahead.
No, somebody was talking.
Sorry. I just wanted to, about that point, Alexandra, I think what you said you're spoiled with 4 people on your formation team. We also have 4 people. Only 3 are actually full-time in campus ministry, and we have one in the lower school. But what? No, what are you doing? Sorry, Kathleen's here with me. Really it is, but our ratio, I mean, I really only spend time mentoring the girls, and that's 125 in the middle school. And so, but because of my other duties, I would love to get to talk to them once a quarter, but that's not even possible physically, and I don't know how you guys make it happen. So we promise twice a year minimum. I'm having a hard time even making that, actually. So I would love to just talk with you maybe even offline about how you make that happen, especially if y'all are teaching. What's your secret? Tell me, teach me your ways.
I have this magic pill, and it makes 4 more hours in the day. We can definitely talk, Emily. That would be great.
Did everybody see the comment from Father Anthony? He said to send a few of you to Kenyon Heights.
I would say yeah. Okay, you'll have to talk to Nancy about that, Father.
I want to thank you for everyone that
Right.
I think it's a thing that we need to be talking about. So that's the time to find means because we need to have a conversation. So thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you. God bless.
God bless.